the nation builder, Barrister Idris Waziri is also the founder of United Tribes of Nigeria. Idris, would like to appreciate you for coming on the program.
As always, thank you very much.
Good morning.
Great.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so let's begin. 2027 is, for many people, the countdown has begun now, just a month away. I know from a purely ideological standpoint, you're not very comfortable with the, if you like, calibration of our political parties right now. Because you have also proposed a couple of things that could be done differently in that regard. But let's talk about what the reality is today. Political parties are gearing up for 2027, no doubt about that. In fact, some of them already have their elective conventions and congresses lined up and what have you. Can we use that as a basis to discuss the, if you like, viability or otherwise of political parties in this country? Because you can't separate the health, so to say, of a political party from the quality of democracy we practice.
So once again, thank you very much. And you are absolutely right. I am in total disagreement with the system of governance in Nigeria, and that stems from the political parties. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, let us start from the position of the law. Section 221 is the bane of this whole problem because it mandates that for you to participate in democracy, mm-hmm. party politics, elections, whatever, you must belong to a party. Mm-hmm. That is the foundation of our problem. Now, where you have weak parties, you end up with a transactional democracy. Where you have strong parties, you end up with a strong institutional democracy. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we start with what is the problem? The problem is these weak parties, and they stem from three major problems. You have structure, you have leadership, and then you have the internal crisis that stems from the lack of those first two, right? So where you have structure, if you remember, everybody kept ridiculing Peter Obi when he came out on the Labour Party. Oh, you don't have structure, right? We ended up with a Labour Party that gave a good run against the PDP, right? If in 2015, a party that came out of nowhere, APC, ended up defeating a party that was here for 16 years. All of these stem from the fact that parties are run by individuals, okay? So where you have an individual, you have the party is based around that person, and once that person is gone, so for example, PDP at the time was, for lack of a better description, being led by a weak leader. Mm-hmm. Hence the collapse of a party that was in power for 16 years. Who was that weak leader, if you don't mind me asking? Sorry?
Who was that weak leader, if you don't mind me asking?
Obviously, it was Goodluck Jonathan at the time. That was the president of the day, right? So hence, like I said, there you have a collapse of a party that had been in power for 16 years. That is the problem when parties are ruled by individuals, right? So again, what you have is a collection of interests rather than a community of ideas, mm-hmm. okay? And that is where I say there is no ideology. So all the root problem of all these problems, these three factors, is that there is no ideology. You understand? Mm-hmm. So where there is no ideology, you have no direction. You understand?
Right.
So now we come to the internal crisis of every party, mm-hmm. okay? And we start with what is true leadership. True leadership is, one, being a party, you are the custodian of that party's constitution, mm-hmm. okay? You mentioned me being the founder of the United Tribes of Nigeria. That in essence is my manifesto. So in the United Tribes of Nigeria, the party is at the top. You are voting not for an individual, not for a particular position, you are voting for the party. Mm-hmm. In South Africa, it's the ANC. Right. Do you understand? It doesn't matter who the person that is the current leader is, you are voting for the party. Mm-hmm. So in China, for example, you vote, the Communist Party is in control. Whoever the leader is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. That's why they're able to make this person a life president, because he achieved so much. He was driving the party's ideology, their mandate, their policies in the right direction, and they said, you know what, we don't need to change you. Mm-hmm. So if the country were to, for example, vote for my mandate, my party, the manifesto that we're delivering to the people, we are not so much about who the president is. If you deviate from what the people have given us their mandate, we will remove you. In Hausa, we say, we'll tuge you. We'll just replace you with somebody else and announce it to the people that this is the new president that carry on with your mandate. Do you understand? Now, again, what is the second aspect of a true leader? it is after custodian of the party constitution, it is being a neutral arbiter. People criticize Buhari during his term for being too passive in that particular role. So unlike an Obasanjo, for example, who would dive into every internal crisis and dictate where the party's decisions should go, someone like Buhari was more passive. Criticize that, don't criticize that, either way you could call him a neutral arbiter. Yeah. He would allow the party to solve its own problem. Exactly. Do you understand? And there you are. So there's now what you have, that's true leadership. And at the end of the day, you mentioned it earlier on, I believe I call myself a nation builder because at the end of the day, that's the only way where you can build a strong nation. Take the PRP, for example, People's Redemption Party, right? Till today, that is the oldest party in Nigeria, but till today, there is no doubt who the leader of that party was, even though he's dead and long gone, Aminu Kano, because he set an ideology. So you find that members of the PRP party are followers of that ideology. They are diehard members of, it's like the ANC, like I said again in South Africa. That's where we get it completely wrong in terms of our democracy and this party-led direction. So when you have what we have today is power brokers and people who allocate tickets. How can we move forward when we have that?
You know, talking about mandate of a party, let's talk about the constitution now. You said we do not look at the individuals or the leaders in that particular party. We look at the party itself and, of course, what it brings to the table. Now, when you hear internal crisis in political parties, we know, but to mention a few, they bring out this constitution and says, this constitution says this in this section, this subsection, and another individual in that same party comes out and say, well, this section says this from the same constitution, and you wonder between yourself, is it the same constitution or a different constitution? How would you explain all of that when individuals have internal crisis and they bring this same constitution to actually defend what the issue is in that particular party?
Well, obviously, every law is subject to interpretation, right? So a simple law that is read based on literal interpretation, you will have a different interpretation, I would have a different interpretation, right? So first we start with the Nigerian constitution itself, like I said, so I mentioned section 221 earlier on, then we have things like the Electoral Act, okay? So where you have, there's Nigerian constitution and then there's party constitution, right? So when you are unable to enforce the rules within your own party, the outcome is inevitable. Internal conflict, right? So where are these internal laws? So let's leave the Nigerian constitution aside. That one is clear. We all have to join the party. Now let's come to the individual parties themselves, right? The reason why there is so much internal conflict is threefold. You have lack of a transparent, your leadership is in question. There's a vast number of Nigerians that question the legitimacy of President Tinubu's win, for example, right? So if the country is doubting your leadership within your party as well, there's bound to be that kind of internal wrangling, right? Then you have the issue of, so we have a lack of transparent leadership. Then you have zonal discrepancies, right? There's always an issue, for example, APC. The big problem in 2023 was, should it be going back to the south or should we just practice democracy? Whoever wins, wins. Do you understand? That zonal thing was I think it was created by PDP during their 16 years, and everybody has seemed to just adopt that as the natural norm. But that is in a clear deviation from what democracy actually is. That means it's not so much about who wins an election, it's about let us zone it to so and so. Do you understand? So those are the kind of issues that always cause internal conflict. And like I said, if you don't have, if you can't enforce your own internal rules and regulations and maintain peace and stability within your own party, then how in God's name are you supposed to lead us as a country? You can't even keep your own house in order. So, and again, that all stems from you have no ideology, you just have a community of people who are just after their self-interest. So today, if my interests aren't being served here, I am jumping to another vehicle, not a party with not an ideology. So in America, for example, everybody is basically a Republican or a Democrat. and their ideologies are absolutely clear. We're either for guns or we're not. We're either for abortion or we're not. Now, whether I'm here for guns, I can be liberal about it or I can be right-wing about it. But I am in favor of guns. Nobody should take away my guns. Do you understand? So in Nigeria, we don't have such lines to define who we are as a people. Do you understand? And when you have weak parties, you have weak institutions, you have a weak nation, and then ultimately directionless.
This issue of ideology is becoming a bit, if you like, blurred. Blurred in the sense that I've spoken to people just like yourself, they say point blank, Nigerian political parties and politicians lack ideology 100%. A handful of persons have also told me that that's not necessarily right, because by their own estimation, whatever these political parties are doing right now is on the basis of their ideology, for whatever it's worth. What ideally should be the ingredients, for want of a better word, of an ideology? If you want to say, for example, PDP has an ideology, the Labour Party, ABGA, and the others have an ideology. What are the factors we should look at and say these are the, if you like, the ingredients in the ideology? For example, there are those who say PDP, APC, all of them, they are the same. The only thing that you can say separate them is interest at every point in time, especially around the election cycle and what have you. You have drawn examples from the ANC in South Africa. You talked about the US, for instance. How do we establish this conversation about ideology?
Again, they can sing we are about ideology all they want till they're blue in the face. The reality of the matter is we, the people that matter, we cannot point to a direction other than these are capitalists. So again, when you say there's no difference between them, there is really no difference between an Atiku and a Tinubu. They are both capitalists. Do you understand? They believe in the selling of our national assets to cronies, political allies, and privatization, for example, right? And so let us look at the global doctrine of ideology. In the world, you're either a capitalist country or you're a socialist country or you're a communist country, right? These are the three basic parameters that one can be described to be to follow. Now, again, you come down to, okay, so like you said earlier, there is really no difference between all of them, irrespective of which party they belong to. They are all about how can we share this national cake? It is never about the people. Do you understand? So irrespective of whether you want to call you have an ideology or not, the fact that you are all there as a community of people about interests, not a community of people about ideology and what are we using to drive the country forward. So there is no long-term plan in Nigeria. Even if you do a proposal, as long as that proposal is not short-term, if it is medium-term, long-term, they will throw it out the window. They're not interested in it because they cannot see the immediate benefit for them. Do you understand? So in terms of politics, where a party lacks an ideology, one, lacks a long-term plan, two, there is just a recycling of issues. So it's let's take APC, for example. 2015, they came in, and the slogan was, change Idole, we must have change, right? Everybody was tired of PDP, so the sentiment then was for change. They read it, they used it, and they won. Just like Obama. Nobody believed that a black man could be president. True. So his slogan was, yes, we can, yes, we can, yes, we can, right? Today, I am criticized as, you must be a madman. How can you, with no money, be thinking about removing these people? I am not looking short term. They say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I ask people, do you know Malcolm X? Do you know Reverend Martin Luther King? You'd be surprised, most people don't. Surprisingly, I was shocked. I asked this question yesterday, and the person said he didn't know them. Really? I swear to God. And I was like, oh my God, you see, now I understand why people think I am left field. Because they don't understand the struggle. The fact that you have to sustain this thing, irrespective of how difficult the journey may seem. It's not about me. It's about me inspiring my generation to say, you know what? We have the numbers to beat anybody that has billions in his account. Right? All we have to do is wake up. That's why I say
the mindset.
Thank you. That's why I say my movement is called the Awaken Movement. Wake up to your power, and this nonsense, this mess that we're in ends immediately. And it's not about do you have the machinery? Do you have the money to challenge these people? No, it's that the democracy is a game of numbers, right? Where the majority have their way, the minority can have their say, right? So again, it's about a mindset, it's about a shift in our, Bob Marley said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. What I hear every time I am faced with this this backlash is, oh God, you have been mentally enslaved, and you need to remove yourself from that.
Would you say it's brainwash?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Let us talk about the issue of godfatherism, for instance. Now, we know it is the norm of the day. It's an individual who is high up there who says, I want this person to be governor, or
like you said,
that is it.
Power brokers,
exactly,
ticket allocators.
like you said. How does that affect leadership when it comes to the area of political parties and, of course, doing the right thing at the end of the day?
Well, like I said earlier, there's a distinction between leadership and true leadership, right? Leadership as we have today are power brokers and people who allocate tickets, people who manipulate delegates. Do you understand? I've heard politicians who boast that, you went for election here, meanwhile the delegates have been hidden in one hotel room somewhere. How is that democracy? Do you understand? How is that true leadership? You understand? So I keep saying this repeatedly whenever I'm here, that we accept the abnormal as normal. So while these electoral malpractices, which they are in reality, carry on and they have been accepted by the norm. So again, I find this interesting. I sit down with some members of the opposition today, technically opposition, right? And I listen to them as a neutral person, right? So I haven't yet decided my party. All I know is this is my manifesto. This is what I am going to declare for the Nigerian public to decide on, right? But I'm listening to these opposition people, and at one point you were in power, right? But what you're saying is, I'm not hearing anything other than, these people, they are so bad for the country. You were bad for the country when you were there as well. I'm speaking now as a citizen, as the beneficiary of your quote-unquote leadership, right? You did the same thing that these people were doing when you were in power. The only difference now is you are a disgruntled set of politicians that feel you need to find a way back in. And all the laws, all the amendments, they are never, look at the timetable for our elections, for example, right? We always start with the president first, then gubernatorial. That's the wrong order. Do you understand? What you need to do is start with local councillors, local government elections, governor, before you get to, once the president has been decided, just look at the drop in voter turnout after we're done with the presidential election. That should already tell you where the problem is. Once we know who did it, that is all over. That means, in fact, the state governors now already have to start dancing to that person's tune, because that's the organ at the top. Do you understand? And as we know, once that guy says left, everybody goes left. And in a case where now, for example, President Tinubu, the executive, and the legislature are married, then again, that organ at the top now has absolute and almost unfettered control. Now, when you come to separation of powers, do we still have a democracy when one of the basic rocks, foundations of democracy is separation of power? So in a country where the two arms now dance to the tune of one individual, then we have already lost democracy as defined. In practice, we're doing something. In theory, we have already lost the vote.
In practical.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the issue of defection. What's your take on it when you see lots of governors defecting to a particular ruling party, and we know the numbers as we can see? What's your take? Do you think it's a right move, or we're heading towards a one-party democracy, or what's your own opinion when it comes to that, basically?
I heard this line in a movie, and the pilot of a ship used to say, "I'm a leaf on the wind, watch how I soar," right? I've taken that for me to mean I am a leaf who learns the currents of the wind to glide and soar, right? Whereas those politicians you just mentioned, they are leaves in the wind, but the wind is just blowing them anyhow, right? They don't have a direction. They don't have an ideology. Their own is just interest, self-interest. Where are my self-interests going to be served? Again, never about the people who you serve. Do you understand? let me segue a little on this matter now, and I do not want to attack our minister and FCTO, Wike.
Yes.
I want to appeal to Wike. You are Abuja's #1 public servant as our minister, but yet in Abuja right now, because your mind from day one has been on River State and how you can control River State from here, Abuja has fallen into disarray. Why do I say this? I drive around on a motorcycle, right? And while most people drive in cars with their ACs up, Abuja has become a cesspool. Do you know what the definition of a cesspool is? Right? Abuja streets are just covered in pool water. I don't want to use the word, the S word, but it is pool water because our manholes are now overflowing with sewage.
But someone would tell you, sorry to interject, someone would say, with all of these constructions ongoing, the roads are being opened and all of the development in Abuja, someone might beg to differ on that.
You know, I'm not one of those people that clap for politicians when they are building roads and infrastructure. That is your basic job description. Do you understand? There is nothing for me to applaud there. So, for example, let's stick with His Excellency Wike. You came in, and your predecessor for 8 years under Buhari basically did nothing in Abuja, right? All he did was amass money in the FCT treasury, which you have now come in, and you're an action guy. We applaud you for being an action guy, right? You're doing what your predecessor should have done with the money that he kept, right? But again, there is nothing that is out of the box here. This is, like I said, that is your basic job description. Even if you don't show up to the office, that is what your office and your subordinates are supposed to do. Do you understand? So now that it's like when Buhari was first appointed, there was a sudden shift. Everybody started to ginger because they thought General Buhari has come back into power. They soon realized it is President Buhari, and there's a great difference between the two men or individuals, right? So everybody now relaxed, and we went back into this. So I applaud. I like that there's been infrastructural development, but now you're building roads, but our roads, like I said, are stinking of. Abuja has become a cesspool, and again, Guzape is where I see the most problem, as in these streets are flowing with this thing, and yet the minister actually lives in that proximity. I think Absokoro and Guzape are adjoining, adjacent districts, right?
Yeah.
So his house, personally, I think he lives in Asokoro technically, but it's as good as being in Guzape. So I get it. You come out in your cars, you rolled up windows, and you're driving past what looks like water, but it's not water. And now, come to the citizens. Your delivery guys are riding past these things, and when they're riding, I see them lift their legs as they ride past. But the water is being kicked up onto those boxes. So, for example, you've ordered food, and your guy comes. Meanwhile, your food, thank you. Do you understand? So now, as citizens, are we supposed to really just keep quiet to that, or are we supposed to knock on the FCT's door and say, sir, I think you need to get in touch with whoever is running this thing and go and clean out these manholes because they are overflowing, and they are overflowing for a reason. Do you understand? So when, like I said at the top, people are there for their interests alone, they have tunnel vision for what has brought them there, not service to the people, then we now are the victims. We now end up with, you know what I mean? Like, this is the nation's capital. We have visitors, we have diplomats who are driving, and they're seeing these things. Like I keep saying, I'd love to be a fly on the wall on almost all these foreign embassies, because they must just, every single day, they just shake their heads and just wonder, can this my term finish quickly so that I can get out of here as soon as possible? Because this country is not working in any way whatsoever. Not working, because we are being led by directionless parties. Like I said earlier on, weak parties lead to transactional democracy.
I want to ask you a question about political parties as it stands right now. We already had quite a number of them, but not so long ago, sometime last year, some associations had come together to formally apply for party membership for, of course, to INEC for approval. We understand one of them now is the NDC, which we understand is the brainchild of former governor of Bayelsa State, Senator Seraki Dixon. Of course, himself is serving senator. We understand all else equal, a few more parties will likely spring up before the election day proper and things like that. Do we need more political parties, or do we need to even cut back, or maybe somewhere in between find the, if you like, the foresight to better manage the ones that we have today?
So again, let's go back to America. America, I think, their population is about 350 million. The last I checked, I don't know what it is today. We have a population local of about over 200, right? So if in a country of 350 million, they have two major parties, what do we need these multiple parties for? We have multiple parties because we have people who have multiple interests. Okay, if we were to narrow down our national interests into ideologies, again, like I said, ideology, we should either be a capitalist country following the line of America and their allies, or the West, should I say. We should be a socialist country in line with countries like, again, like I said, countries like Canada.
Scandinavian countries.
Yeah, they apply a mixture of both. You know what I mean? So their health care is socialist, but their governance in terms of whatever may be capitalist. Okay, so for me, like I said, I don't make any bones about where I belong. I am for socialism. And what is socialism? Socialism is less about the individual, it's about more about everybody, the collective. You understand? What is in the best interest of the collective? Hence, like I said, why internally I am a PRP member, irrespective of which party, which vehicle I now choose to contest in 2027. I am in my heart of hearts a PRP member because my leader, look at, like I said, Amin Kano has been dead a long time ago, but my ideology is of him. He is my leader. Do you understand? And he will forever be my leader. Now, we can say, let's say take President Tinubu, for example, right? President Tinubu from early 90s had a long-term plan, like we talked about long-term, medium, and long-term, right? So we can say President Tinubu has a long-term plan, whether it was for him or whether it's for the country. Now, as a lawyer, I've had to look at the tax reforms recently. And again, I would now applaud President Tinubu because in reviewing these reforms, I now see that he has a long-term vision for the taxation of Nigeria. So one, he has streamlined the various laws into one, and he now I can see where we're going in terms of that. So for that, I'm like, yeah, I can see where that is. So I would now say there's some kind of long-term vision for the country. But in terms of every other thing, what we're saying, look at their slogan, renewed hope. So let's look at the words renewed hope. Same party, change, we need change. Now is renewed hope. What does that mean? What does that tell you? It means under 8 years of your party, people lost hope, and you're now trying to renew it.
But
under
the
yours.
APC guys say no, there was hope. It's just that we're renewing it. We're trying to scale up the hope.
And make
That's
it
how they
better.
explain that mantra. Right.
Well, again, that's what you can say that all you want at the top. I am down at the people level, and I'm hearing there is no hope. There is the horizon is very, very bleak. Do you understand? So, what you have in Nigeria are those who are close to the corridors of power that are sycophants and will sing whatever a guy at the top wants them to sing, and then there's the reality on ground. There is a huge disconnect. You know how they used to say people in the villa is like they don't allow the president to read newspaper because for some of the things that go on in terms of policy and whatever, you have to scratch your head and say, are these people really in touch with what is going on and realities on ground? Do you understand? So what they say about, everybody keeps mentioning the primary purpose of government is security and welfare. There's another very important clause in that chapter 2, which says government actions must be humane. Again, referring to the tax reforms, where it has removed a lot of Nigerians from the burden of tax. Do you understand? Again, I have to clap. That's where now I clap to a leader, because you have now said you are now working towards the betterment of your people. There are companies, there are huge that are doing huge turnovers. You can tax them and get the country to move forward without having to place an additional burden on the people. Now let's come down to local government, for example. You have AMAC running around now asking people to pay TV and radio license.
I hear that has been scrapped, so
I hope so.
Suspended.
I hope so, because again,
that was ridiculous. To say.
Thank you. Where is the humanity in that? People are struggling to eat. You're now saying, because that, yes, it is there in the constitution or in your bylaws. Must you enforce it? That now comes to the person that I'll go at the top. I'm a chairman. Did that make any sense to you to go and put additional burden on people? No. Like I said, you have to now question the people that are occupying those positions. Are they there for the people, or are they there for themselves?
Let's bring the court into this. Of course, you're a legal practitioner. What role does the court play when it comes to internal crisis, or when it comes to politics and all of that in Nigeria? What role do they basically play to give that balance like you mentioned?
Well, the judiciary is usually tied. Their hands are usually tied. Okay. So, for example, they will always tell you in law school, the bench does not descend into the arena. You understand? So even when you see lawyers clearly heading in the wrong direction, you're restricted from stepping in and guiding him
or taking sides.
You understand? So if the parties cannot put their houses in order, we have no choice but to continue to receive petitions upon petitions. So the electoral process is more or less being decided in the courts because there is no internal democracy. Like I said, you have delegate manipulation, you have imposition of candidates, you have questionable candidates winning elections and so on and so forth. So the courts, in my opinion, they have no choice but to deal with cases that are being filed in front of them. Do you understand? Now, the only question is how independent are they? Remember we talked about separation of powers earlier, right? So again, one of the things that I would commend President Tinubu for is in ensuring that the judiciary is well endowed. You understand? So judges are not hungry, let's put it that way, right? But again, is that going to give you an independent judiciary, or is that going to give you, oh God, well done, thank you very much for giving me this thing. Now I feel inclined to decide my things in your favor, which is a Nigerian factor, by the way.
Yes, it is.
As a country, we are so materialistically driven that it is no longer about what is right or wrong, it's about who has the money. Whoever has the money, he can do and undo.
So loyalty has nothing to play in that?
Loyalty, again, is based on who has control of the party machinery. Do you understand? So unlike where the party has the power, so, for example, like I said in my manifesto, the party is at the top. Whoever is the president and his cabinet, you answer to the party. The minute you deviate from what we've sold to the public, we're removing you. It's that simple. Because again, we have to have that ideology, we have to have that direction. And once we take that direction, look at Dubai. In no time, they went from zero to hero. Do you understand? That is again, you want to say they're not democratic because they have a monarchy, but the monarchy has the people's interest at heart. They're not, I mean, like I watched a video of a Saudi minister, and the Saudi ministers are generally part of the royal family, right? And the criticism he was addressing was that they said there was a project that was done, and it was done for this amount of money, and the guy was very, not arrogant, but he was like, what do you concern with? The work was done. Do you understand? Forget that it was cost this much or whatever. The work was done, and that's all that should matter to people. Do you understand? So in Nigeria now, I keep saying, it's not like we can't afford to get this country set within a very short time. We just simply have people who would rather fill their own personal pockets and coffers than actually use the money for what it's meant for.
I want us to talk about independent candidacy or candidature, as case may be, because the last couple of years we've seen politicians or seen some sort of, advocates and activists like yourself who say, look, we can't sustain the status quo, these money-backed politics that we've been playing since 1999. It's time Nigeria got people who can stand up and say, look, I want to be president, and they don't necessarily need any form of political party or special purpose vehicle to accomplish their objective or their ambition, that sort of thing. In today's Nigeria, is that realistic, or is it just some sort of fantasy?
Again, we come back to what are the interests of those that can make that a reality. Those that can make that a reality are the Nigerian legislature, right? So again, is it in their interest
to do that
or not? Do you understand? If we now say yes, then someone like, again, Peter Obi, who has a particular block, right, then now becomes a factor, right? If you have anybody, Konkoso, for example, now all of a sudden Konkoso now becomes a factor because he has a Konkosia movement. Do you understand? Whereas most of these politicians can't even win elections in their backyard, right? So that again doesn't now seem to be in the interest of the national legislature to implement such a shift in our politics. So it all boils down to that section 224, whether it should remain or whether it should be repealed or amended to allow for independent candidacy. Do you understand? But like I said, where the current system allows for Oga at the top to take control of a party machinery, the structure, the everything, then it's something that will never happen.
Let's talk about reforms now. What reforms do you think can actually improve party leadership when it comes to, I don't want to mention any political party, but in general? You have to
enforce first and foremost your own party constitution. So what is your constitution? What is your party all about? Do you understand? So again, like you said earlier on, everybody will claim they have an ideology. No, you have constitutions that even from and look at how we mentioned privatization now. Something as clear as Section 16(1)(c) and Section 16(2)(c) clearly does not allow for privatization. But for 16 years, a party in power, PDP, completely violated that, and there was no repercussion. In fact, most people didn't even seem to understand that had happened. Like I told you, when I first saw that and I realized the clear violation, I started raising the issue with senior advocates of Nigeria, and they all had one thing to say: the Chapter 2 is non-justiciable. So for me, you have already just taken that box that the judiciary put you in, and irrespective of your title, senior advocate of Nigeria, you refuse to do what Gani Fawemi said to every lawyer: challenge it. Do you understand? And that challenge is where I'm now saying, well, I found a way to come out of that box. So, do you understand? And I am now saying, no. In fact, it's simple. No subsidiary law can supersede the constitution. So whatever the NCP, National Council of Privatization Act, or the Bureau, the act that established the BPE, say, they are by their very establishment in violation of 16(1)(c) and 16(2)(c). Do you understand? And that in essence makes them void and makes every act that they took void. So if we were serious, right, that in itself already right now, someone in the judiciary, without me having to file the case, everybody should now wake up and say, oh, hang on, our national cake was shared. Do you understand? Why are we where we are? Because electricity, for example, right? Companies that did not have the capacity to handle this thing were given these things, and see where we are. Take Nitel, our national telecom company, was killed off and sold off to a briefcase company that obviously did not meet the requirements. And see where MTN now, see how much money South Africa is getting from MTN, right, as a private company operating in our own, whereas we allowed our own to die. Is that a forward-thinking country? Are we as a people sensible? We're not.
But again, let's circle back to our democratic process. Recently, we had these several debates about the Electoral Act, amendments bill, which of course has now been amended, real time, signed into law, and what have you. You are not just a lawyer; you are invested, I should say, in our political process. Well, what have been your concerns beyond the hula baloo around electronic transmission of results?
I'll just answer this very simply. You talk about electoral transmission of results, right? So you have digital on one end, right? But the starting point is what? Printing. What is that? Is that digital? Is there anything digital about that?
Well, that's from manual.
Do you understand? So there's already a conflict of direction right from there. It's either we're going to digitize these things, whereby I can sit down and just as I can comfortably do a bank transaction in my home, right, and I feel secure that the bank is not going to miss my money, right, then why in God's name in 2027 can we not have the ability to just say, well, I'm voting PDP, APC, whatever, from the comfort of my home?
But Barrister Idi, have we gotten to that? We've not gotten to that point.
Is it what's the billions that INEC is being given every single election?
We have a lot of challenges when it comes to network and all of that. There was something about the e-transmission that we're talking about when it comes to election. Of course, that is the way forward. But have we gotten to that point yet, Barrister Idi?
My question is simple. Are we saying that the technology that would allow that to happen like this does not exist? Yes, it does.
Are we ready for it to happen like this?
You've answered your question. Do we have the political will to make it happen or not? And you've answered your question, no, we do not. So the solution to our electoral problems are there. We have them, we just refuse to apply them because it is not in the best interest of the rigging factor of Nigerian politics to allow that to happen. We cannot be talking about thumb printing in today's age. You should be entering a booth and pressing a button, and that button it has the information that can be electronically. Where are we having problems now? You have people who are just simply printing to manipulate the elections. So these results that we're transmitting are results that somebody has now manipulated a ballot box snatching. They will now go into a corner and you just see people. You've seen the videos now. They're just printing, and then that is what you're going to transmit. You're not serious now. You're not being serious about the process at all.
How about issues around the money factor in our politics in Nigeria? I've spoken to even some members of these major political parties recently, and this one has told me that, look, money is now the front and center, so to speak, in terms of determining who clenches the ticket, whether it's House of Assembly, House of Reps, or governorship. This is even at the level of congresses and elective, convention and what have you. It is unrealistic, like Jim and I had talked about at the top of the program this morning, to extricate money as a factor altogether from our political process. But how can we de-emphasize? How can we demonetize?
I think that now brings me back to, let's circle back to emancipation of mental slavery. Do you understand? Like I said, Nigeria is a materialistic-centered country. Do you understand? Everything centers around who has money. And so again, the definition of a big man in Nigeria is by how many people feed under him. Do you understand? It isn't about so much, what does this big man actually do? How did he even become a big man? Let us look at his business. Does his business actually justify his status in society?
Bettina Malaya says, if you didn't bother about the source of my poverty, why do you worry over the source of my wealth?
Yeah, he said that.
If you didn't bother about the source,
you didn't bother about the source of my poverty, why are you worried about the source of my wealth?
Well, again, that's a statement that comes from a man who lives in a country where the abnormal has become normal. Do you understand? If you said that somewhere else, or where they will backhand you. Do you understand? Because that statement in itself, right, is you are boasting about something that does not register as common sense. Do you understand? If nobody can question your source,
right, to trace it,
then, that, like I said, that statement for me is a shocking statement to come out. And again, it can only be said in a country like Nigeria, where it's said and it stays. Do you understand? So, you all saw the interview with Daniel Bwala, right? Where he was asked about, so you see, again, even in our critics, right, there's no ideology. You're just a critic for being a critic until the right person comes calling and now you jump to him. So less than 4 years ago, you were complaining about bullion vans being seen at the current president's house. You were asked about that, and now, all of a sudden, you are trying to defend it. Do you understand? So, money politics in Nigeria, unfortunately, is not even just politics. Everything, like I said, boils down to money. It's not about who is right and who is wrong. It's about the person that was wrong. Does he have money? Then you, my friend, just shut up and go and sit down in one corner, because nobody will see it your way. Because see the person that is paying the piper. So this is the person that's paying my bills. How do you want me to go and bite the hand that's feeding me? In this kind of economy, an impossibility.
But that is like the order of the day. It's a norm now. Even individuals, the ones that are the voiceless, I would say, actually see it as a norm. When there is an election and all I need to do is sell my vote for 1,000, 2,000 and I am good. How do we change that orientation, that mindset you were talking about now? You said a lot of things that have actually opened my eyes also as a Nigerian, I would not lie. But how do we change that orientation? Bring back our mindset to the right path to understand what is actually going on, Garstady?
Suffering. Unless you suffer enough to the point where your brain finally activates and you realize that 2,000 naira that you're selling your vote for is not going to change your life, right? So, for example, now, the hunger that has hit people, I would hope that come 2027, you're not selling your vote for 2,000 naira. You're voting for, actually, again, not just like 2015, it's time for change. It it is time to try something else, because this, we have now had it for 12 years and it's just downwards. We've just been going downwards. Everything just, no price has come down. Everything is just going up, up. Do you understand? And there is no, like I said, the horizon is bleak. There is no hope. Do you understand? All this, you can sing renewed hope all you want, but the fact that I cannot feed my family, the fact that despite all my hard work and efforts, there is nowhere I can turn where there is relief. Do you understand? And the relief is what? Some palliatives that you come and share that really, if you can, when you think of things on a medium-term position, they are not changing anything. The only way to engage real change in this country, it's to look at the sectors that actually bring about change. Mining, agriculture. Do you understand? Pick those two things up. Stop giving me 7-point plans, 11-point plans, or whatever. Pick these two sectors and make them work. For example, my state, Yobe, I can comfortably tell you now that I'm seriously considering saying, you know what, Nigeria, calm down. I need to go and solve the problem of my state. And if I solve the problem of my state through agriculture, I actually solve the problem of the nation, because I'm feeding the nation.
Don't forget insecurity is part of the problem there.
What brings about insecurity? Joblessness, right? A breakdown of the infrastructures, the institutions, right? Where you have idle minds, that's where the devil's playground is, right? So it's easy for somebody to come in and sell you an ideology that, you know, or what have you, or bring about insecurity. Like, for example, now take kidnapping and banditry in the Northwest, yes? That is a business. People have realized, oh, well, if I kidnap this person and I squeeze that button, the money will come in. Do you understand?
As they go, don't forget.
Do you see an end to that? That is a successful business venture, an industry. The success rate is so high that if you were to compare it to any other business, why would I go and kill myself doing hard work like this when I can just go and do that? Do you understand? The solution to that is engage people, give something for people to do. Do you understand? So if you're looking at Yobe State, for example, okay, you have the 6th largest state in the country. That's landmass. That is agricultural revolution. That is hunger being solved. Do you understand? Now you say insecurity and some religious connotation to that. Again, I think I mentioned it the last time when Americans wanted to put a visa ban on Kwankwaso. I'm like, whoever that guy in America that came up with that law, that guy's educational status needs to be questioned, because you live in a federal country where the state can decide to do what it wants to do. And yet you have left your country where that applies to come to another country to say, oh, you cannot do that. I have to question your sanity or your educational status, because I don't understand that. Do you understand? Other than, like I said, you're just pushing an agenda, irrespective of whether that agenda makes sense or not.
You know, I want to take us back a bit to the AMAC election that happened last month.
Area council election.
Area council election that happened. I want to just take us back, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Barrister Edie, because I will need you to predict something for me. You will think that with what is happening in Nigeria now, a lot of individuals, people, Nigerians, any slightest opportunity we have when it comes to making a choice, everyone will come out at their mass, will come out because we want this change to come, because we are preparing ourselves for 2027. But when you look at the area council election, it was nothing to write home about. A lot of individuals didn't even show up. People were there. What? They were not nonchalant when it comes to the election. Now, with this that has just happened, this is just a tip of the iceberg, Barrister Edie. Now, 2027, and everyone is talking about the change. What do you see? Do you think people are going to be nonchalant? Or people are going, it's the same old, or we are ready for change? We're just trying to gear ourselves. Because with what we saw last month, it's nothing to write home about.
I had the same view, and I spoke to someone, I won't mention the person's name, but he now said to me, no, don't use that as a litmus test for 2027 presidential election. Now, the point he was making was there was a nonchalance or protest voting, or I think I not send. Now, that I not send it boils down to a lack of understanding that the most important person to you as a citizen is your councillor. That is where governance begins for you as an individual,
Very
right?
true.
So, but again, because we have turned our democratic process upside down and put that presidential one that should come last on top, that's where now, so what the person was trying to say was those results were not indicative of what would actually happen in 2027. You understand? People just didn't feel the need to bother with this useless thing. Just carry go. When the real cocoa is going to happen, that is when you really see my hand. You understand? So why would I go and waste my time in the sun for a local government chairman, whatever? APC carry it. You understand? Is irrelevant. Wrong in your thinking. I think very wrong. But I can understand it. You understand? Because again, the system has been turned upside down to make sure that the only election that actually matters in the country is the presidential one. That's why I told you earlier on, once the presidential election is done, the gubernatorial one, you see an almost 50% drop in turnout because the election has already been won. Do you understand? The rest is now look at PDP as an opposition, for example. As a party, that party has more or less been decapitated. How many PDP governors do we still have now? Almost everybody has defected to APC. Yeah. So really, again, it boils down to the people have been mentally subdued, economically impoverished to the point where there is no hope in either your economic status changing anytime soon or the political machine, the political engine of the country being moved in your favor as a citizen. So really, what I find is, like I said, INEC tells you there's about 90-something million people registered to vote. But like I told you, in the last 3 elections, less than 30 million people actually come out to vote. And who are those 30 million people? They are in the rural areas, the local government areas, those people that sell their votes for 2,000 naira. Do you understand? I have spoken to many of, like I told you, my target audience aren't those 30 million. I dash those 30 million to PDP, APC, and Labour Party. I'm not interested in your 30 million votes. I am interested in the 60 million that are inactive but are registered. And inside, though, I've met a lot of people that don't even have their PVC votes. They are their cards. They are so against the system that they don't even bother to have a card. Remember, we have 200 and something million. Only 90 something are registered, right? So imagine the amount of people that fall into that category. But no problem, you stay where you are. At least those of you that actually went and got the card, you are the ones that I'm speaking to because we are twice the number that is being shared between these political parties.
But sometimes, Barrister Edie, they might have the card, but yet they lack a lackadaisical attitude to come out and vote.
That's what I'm saying. That's where my strategy is. That's why I keep telling people, I'm not concerned that I don't have the money. I'm not concerned that I don't have the structure. The structure, Peter Obi showed us in 2023, that is people. If you have the votes, that's your structure. It's not about whether this party has been existing and how long it has been there. No. Peter Obi at least destroyed that myth in 2023 because he almost went on par with PDP. Do you understand? So if I can speak to that 60 million that is just sitting on the sidelines, they have the cards, they know what's right, but they just don't feel they can make an impact. No, wake up. Awaken movement says, arise. We are the key electorate of Nigeria. That's what that acronym actually stands for. Awaken. If we were to awaken to our power, we can effect the change, irrespective of the bullion vans that will come in, will show up during election time. They can bring them. We will look at you in the eye and we will beat you.
No, you know what, Barrister, let me put you on the spot again, because you are a lawyer and I know you do well in answering this question. You know, last week we had a little bit of issue, not really an issue, but my co-host and I, we were reviewing the papers and we saw what the statement ADC said, that they are hell-bent, not in those words, but in bringing down the APC.
ADC?
Yes, ADC to APC. So in my own view, I was saying, now I want to I will not tell you what I said, but should that be the focus in bringing down another political party? Shouldn't that focus be tilted towards making Nigeria better? What's your take on that statement when you hear a political party aiming at another political party and saying, our strategy is to cripple you completely and bring you down? What's your take on that when you hear such statement? There are lots of pressing issues around.
Again, it boils down to, why are you a politician? Why are you in politics to begin with? Like I said, I have sat down and heard conversations, like, as a neutral party, you understand, between with people who would fall into that category or that party or whatever, that opposition, you understand? And the conversation isn't about policies, it isn't about the people, it's about, these people, we need to just get them out. Do you understand? And now, when you were in power, that's how they too were talking about you. They just needed to get you out. Do you understand? So it's about their interests. It is a committee of interests, not the people, not a committee of policies, ideology. If that conversation had been about ideology, about we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to implement this, and that issue of once you focus the conversation on that, the people will come to you, get the votes. Do you understand? But no. It's about, how do we remove these people from power? And it's about, and to do that, it's about, again, how do we amass the money? How do we get the right people that can come into this new party and now form a powerful opposition? But this ADC that we're speaking about, as we know right now, there's already internal crisis in the party. They haven't even gone anywhere. There doesn't seem to be a clearly defined leadership within that party. When we talked about true leadership, do you understand?
We did.
Right? So in that party, we have former vice presidents, we have former governors, all of whom want to be the leader of that party. So again, what is your constitution? So if ADC now, for example, what is your ideology? What is your constitution? You're just another vehicle, like APC sprung up out of nowhere. You understand? There was ANPP, there was CPC, there was this, that. You understand? You could say they all formed a coalition that now became APC. But that's what I'm trying. That's the essence, that a party from nowhere can just spring up and take over an election in Nigeria, because there is no foundation of ideology for any one of you. You're just all just jumping from one place to another, finding which home, which vehicle will serve my interest, which party would allow me, that will either guarantee my slot. That's what we said earlier on now, that the power shakers, the movers and shakers of that party can say, this person, you've got this ticket. Do you understand? And it's more or less a guarantee sort of thing. Do you understand? So today, like I told you, I am a PRP person by inclination, but I may pick another party simply because the vehicle has more viability in terms of the next election than other than, but not because you have sold me on your ideology.
Now, do you think we're tilting towards a one-party system with all of these things that we're seeing, defections here and there? Do you think that's the focus as of now?
Tilting.
Yes, towards
tilting indicates we are moving. We are already there. It is already a one-party state.
But some people beg to differ.
Again, like I said, those people that beg to differ are sycophants who are already towing the line of that party that has become the one-party state. You understand? So when you now say, we're not, all the sycophants are defined as people who they only see one thing. They're not, irrespective of what arguments you make, how much sense I make to you, it's just a brick wall. It's not even entering the brain power that's here to even enter and come out the other end. It's not even, they've closed this ear, it's not even entering. It is, hey, we're just saying that is it. We don't want to hear anything. Do you understand?
Well, is that the way to go there?
Of course not.
I want to expand on Jumai's question regarding these defections. When governors started defecting, the first theory to it in terms of the incentive or the motivation was to say that, look, well, these governors need to secure the bag, as I say, in terms of second term, re-election. But they were saying a bunch of governors who have no business standing for re-election because most of them are cycling out their second and, of course, their last term. So you're wondering, what exactly is the motive behind that sort of thing? When you could have stayed in your PDP or whatever other party where you belong and continued your political career or whatever it is you're doing. But we're seeing these governors move. The latest being the governors of various states. A man many had sworn will not move an inch, in the words of my mom. But we've seen all of that happen the last few days. We're hearing that Bala Mohammed is likely going to move this week. And then the last man standing at that point will be Sheyi Makinde for your state. And when all of this happens, the chance that Sheyi would move at some point, for many people, is only a matter of time. And that likelihood is high, they say. When you do your assessment as a Nigerian and someone who follows these developments, What are your thoughts? What do you think will be driving all of these?
Self-interest. You see the writing on the wall. This party has secured this election before we even enter 2027.
What's
So
the
what
bargaining
is the
chip
point?
that
What is the point?
What's the bargaining chip that the APC has that is working this magic that we're seeing? I mean, from your own assessment.
The number of states that have already gone in that direction, do you understand? That's why I said once you start the elections from the presidential, do you understand? And the president has already won, APC has technically won. Your own state right now is at risk because the machinery of the federal government is now going to bring all of its might or down on what, less than 5 states. Do you understand? We've already secured the remaining. So all we have to now do is pump all the money. Remember, money politics. Pump all the money into that state. So what's if you were the governor, what would you do? Do you understand? Even if you were a governor who really had the interests of your people at heart. So you've done 4 years, you put things in place, and you're looking at, oh my God, I am one of like less than 5 governors left, right? And I'm looking at the machinery that's about to descend into my state, police, soldiers, whatever, civil defense, all the players that need to ensure that the politics is going in one direction. Even if you had the people's interest at heart, you would jump and join that one so that at least you can possibly finish your 8 years and now say, let me retire to the retirement home of governors, the Senate. Do you understand? And then from there, just continue collecting my pension till the day I'm dead. So really, you can't, with the way the system is set up, it's not a wonder that is what is happening. The only question now is, are they doing it simply to just join the winning party, the one-party state, or are they doing it really as a way of actually securing the continuity of the work that they have begun? And based on the fact that most people aren't there for the people, that number of those, the less than 5 of them that actually do it for continuity is actually practically non-existent.
You know, some of these political parties are trying to re-strategize, coming back and to douse or to calm the internal crisis in their party. Do you think is the right step in the right direction? That reorientation to understand that, hey, conflict is not the way. Let's come together, because we cannot be having internal crisis in our party and yet we want to rule Nigeria. So what's your take on that, trying to come together, you know, trying to balance it all and disagree and at the same time come to agree?
Well, it just boils down to fix your house or pack your load and go back home. You understand? Like I said, the choices are very clear. So it's either you put your house in order. So let us come now to solution at the end of the day, right? The solution to all of this is you have to enforce your own party's constitution, irrespective of interest or whatever. When the rules are murky, like I said, conflict is inevitable. So there has to be internal party transparency, right? Where there's primaries, let the primaries be transparent and legitimate. You understand? Let there be no delegate manipulation. Let the people of the party feel that there is internal democracy. Like we said, you cannot have a party that does not have internal democracy talking about leading the country. Do you understand? From your house, if your house is not in order, why should I feel confident that when you get there, there's going to be harmony? That's why I said, look at China as a country, right? There is absolute harmony. Look at Russia, there is absolute harmony. So when the world was going through the Cold War in the 60s and 70s, in the 60s, right? The Cold War was basically a doctrinal war between communism and capitalism, right? Now we have the benefit of hindsight, right? And hindsight shows that so let me ask you a question. Between America, China, and Russia, which countries look more stable today, both in terms of their politics and in terms of the economy? You answer that question for me.
I'll pick China.
There you go. Do you understand? So we now have the benefit of hindsight. There were people who were being arrested in America. I'm sorry, but there were people who were being literally almost being arrested in America for being communists. Do you understand? Because it was that much of a fundamental shift. Do you understand? They were brainwashing their people into believing that capitalism is the way forward. Do you understand? The result of capitalism is things like what happened in 2008, that housing market collapse, which affected the whole world.
Yes,
Do you understand? Credit crunch. Because why? Your system is a scam. Do you understand? It is faulty. These ones that your Hollywood movies have brainwashed the rest of the world into thinking this is the way forward. See how stable they are today. America apparently owes the most money to China. Do you understand? Yet they are going around the world now creating conflicts everywhere they go, right? But the ones that you painted as the big bad dogs, they are the quiet ones. They are the ones that are not firing. Which country has fired the nuclear weapon? America. They fired it once. They saw the damage. You're like, let's do it again. They did it twice. Yet you go around the world saying, oh, Iran, we don't want them to have nuclear weapons. Nuclear war. You are the only people that have fired this weapon, not once, twice. Do you understand? Yet you are the ones that want to now give us the moral high ground that no, we need to. Their national security somebody in the high end in the intelligence sector resigned.
Yes,
and he made it clear. Just like Colin Powell, unlike Colin Powell, that was forced to go and lie to the UN, which he now later came back. Thank you. That was the worst moment of his life, because he trusted the system to have done their homework, and he was fed lies. This guy, he's lost his wife to these kinds of fake conflicts, and he's saying, no, I cannot be a party to this. The rest of the Western world, the allies now, NATO, Trump is looking for their support, and they're not giving it because of what you led us down this path before.
Well, he said he doesn't need the support.
Why did you, the day before, why did you ask for the help? You asked for the help the day before. Then the next day when you saw that there was I don't want your help again. You know, President Trump, you know what I mean?
I want us to begin to wrap up now for time sake. Let's look at INEC, for example. INEC, as part of his own remits or mandates, has a responsibility again, I'm trying to find the word, regulate political parties. At least we understand, for example, amongst other responsibility or engagements, INEC must by all means monitor or observe the primaries of political parties. INEC has to, as it were, read the riot acts to them and things like that. Incidentally, INEC has new leadership in place. We've seen just a handful of cycle elections here and there by way of test for the new chairman, Professor Amukwito. When you look at INEC today, given what you're seeing from several election cycles before now, do you see an INEC that will, as it were, put its best foot forward, do better by the people this time?
I think if you recall, my interviews here started with my issue on privatization.
Right.
If you recall, there's a letter from me to this new INEC chairman on his table right now to be fair and balanced, to apply the law across board, right? So one of INEC's main issues has been the deregistration of parties, right? So you've been deregistering parties for minor infractions, yes? But the two major parties, PDP, APC, they have been violating one of the most crucial laws in our constitution, that Privatization Act, right? And yet, you have not yet, as you put it, put your best foot forward. What I would have hoped was that without forcing me to actually take you to court to enforce you to deregister PDP and APC, you should have done it to show us that you are a fair and balanced umpire. Do you understand? Like I keep saying, compare it to a football match. The referee has already allowed your opposition to enter the football field and scoring empty goal before even saying match can start. Is that a fair umpire in terms of INEC? Do you understand? So for me, there is no, as a Nigerian, as a politician, I am not that confident in INEC's impartiality when it comes to being the enforcer of our electoral laws in the country. Just like we said earlier, whoever is Oga at the top, that's who everybody dances to. Who appoints the INEC chairman?
Of course, the president.
Thank you. Who appoints?
But we have alternatives to that method.
Are we being serious about changing our direction in terms of elections? Do you understand? If we are not, and again, it comes now back to the National Assembly, right? So there was a recent amendment to the Electoral Act. The first thing I called one of my friends to say was, no, actually, he called me and asked, what do you think about this? And I'm like, the fact that we're still doing elections or presidency first, right? We've lost the plot already from there. Do you understand? Because it is not about what's in the best interest of the people. It's about what's in the best interest of the ruling party, right? And not even just the ruling party, it's in all of their interests, because like I said, for me, there's no difference between all of them, the parties and the politicians that make up the parties, because they are all about us. And what works for you today, you want to leave it there because it will work for you tomorrow. Do you understand? It is not in any of their interest to turn the tables around and start this process from up this way up. Do you understand? I've seen cases where young men come from Yobe to come and meet me at home, and one of their stories I found was horrifying, was that a guy who won, I think, House of Assembly was intimidating this young man because up until the eve of the election, this guy was campaigning on PDP. Overnight, he woke up the next day and switched to APC and won. So this young boy has been going around the constituents just saying, wise up, oh, see how the people just useless our mandates, do you understand? And he's now being intimidated by that House of Assembly member. So understand that the rot isn't just from federal, isn't just from state government, even down to our houses of assembly. Our politicians feel that they're not there as public servants, they're there as ogas at the top. You understand? So earlier on when I said I had to watch how I was speaking to Wiki, in reality, I'm supposed to bark at you and command you to go and fix up these sewers. But I have to tread carefully because, you understand? Because the system has made it that you feel you are the oga. No. When you guys get to traffic jams, you're not supposed to switch on your sirens and your soldiers come down and clear road for you. No, we are the people that matter. Make sure that go out there and clear the road. Make sure that the traffic starts to move. Then you now pass. I remember there was a day I was with a Korean, and then I think it was Goodluck that was in power at the time. So you know how they stop and traffic now when president is about to pass. The convoy that passed and the length of time that we were sitting as car after car after car after car was passing, the guy just said, that guy must be the most powerful man in the world, because even powerful countries don't have that length of convoy. Talking about a country that claims we don't have money, we need your aid. If they are the other country that's supposedly giving aid, would you really take you seriously? Do you understand? Look at every single politician, even down to councillor. Everybody has convoy. And look at the prices of petrol today. You see most of these cars empty. The backup cars that are passing. For what? Who are you? Why do you feel you need that kind of level of security? It's waste. Just from the cars that make up our convoys for all of our politicians in Nigeria. Just calculate the amount of petrol that we're burning. When in Congress, in America, probably a guy is riding to this thing on a bicycle. So are we not a mentally unstable country?
I want us to, lastly, now to tie it up, look at the state of opposition in Nigeria today. I know you have alluded to that extensively in the course of this conversation. You've talked about how that the money factor is buying people over, so to speak, from other parties into the APC, and it appears that trajectory is going to have a spillover into the election proper and what have you. Is there any hope that could change at some point in time? Because how do you say you practice democracy when there's little or no opposition? That's so you're not talking about theory and practice. You understand? So the theory is we have the things in place, but in practice, at least by name.
Yeah, but by name. But in practice, they don't exist. You understand? So we don't. As far as I'm concerned, we are not practicing a democracy in Nigeria. You understand? We never have, because those players that are participants in the democratic process don't even understand what the principles of democracy are themselves. You understand? So we are being led by unlettered people, right, who have just by chance, by cronyism, have found themselves in the corridors of power. And like we said earlier, the people, the power brokers, the ticket allocators, they give these tickets to people who are loyal to what? Not policy, not ideology, loyal to the person. So who is at the top? That's who my loyalty is to.
Quite an interesting reality for this democratic process. But that's why we're leaving the conversation. We'd like to say a big thank you to you, Barrister Idris.
Thank you very much
for taking our time to share these very powerful thoughts with us on the program.